The Liberal Party continues to gain momentum in the federal election, according to exclusive Ipsos polling for Global News. The Liberals under Mark Carney have opened up a double-digit lead over the Conservatives, placing them in majority government territory if the election were held today. A little more than half of respondents say they are certain of their choice, with just under 1 in 5 saying their vote has changed in the last 4 weeks. But the poll does suggest some are still open to switching their vote, with 5% of Liberal supporters suggesting they may vote Conservative and close to 20% saying they are considering the NDP. The poll shows Conservative voters are more loyal to the party, with only 6% contemplating a Liberal vote and just 3% looking at the NDP.
The people who are most committed to voting for their particular choice right now are the Conservatives. In fact, the Liberal vote is quite soft and quite volatile.
The poll was conducted by Ipsos and surveyed 1,000 voters between April 1st and the 3rd. It has a margin of error of plus minus 3.8 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. There are still more than half of respondents who say it is time for another federal party to take over. Where is that support landing?
Well, it's landing all over the place. It's not consolidated behind one party right now, but those who are most likely to support change are voting for the Conservatives right now. And in fact, if you take a look at the numbers, the Conservatives are even up from where they were in the last election. The biggest story that we see in the polling right now has been the decline of the NDP. Now, obviously not as big a story as the closing of the gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives, but the party that's really lost a lot of support in comparison to how it's performed in previous elections is the NDP, which in this poll is at 10%. That's down from the 15-16 that we typically see them in election campaigns, and certainly down from high watermarks that we saw under people like, for example, Jack Layton.
Okay, and a little more than half, with 53% of Canadians say their voting intention is certain, ironclad. So how much room is there for parties to sway voters 3 weeks into the election and looking ahead to the 28th?
Well, one of the things in politics these days is the amount of commitment that people have to their political choice is not what it used to be historically, where you said, like, I'm a conservative, progressive conservative for life, or a conservative for life, or a liberal for life. People are willing to consider all sorts of options. There's a lot of campaign to go, a lot of flexibility in these numbers, and as you just noted, about half the people who have given us an answer in terms of how they vote could decide to change their mind prior to Election Day. So a lot of campaign to go still.
So all elections are important, Darrell, but how do you get the sense that Canadians are viewing this election?
They're telling us it's critically important. And you can see, given the issues that we're dealing with, particularly south of the border, and everybody's going to be hearing about today in terms of what's happening to the global economy, Canadians are feeling very precarious at the moment and feel that their political leaders need to be aligned, and they need to have the right political leaders leading us through this very difficult circumstance. And as a result of that, they're really looking hard at the choices.
So, Darrell, if voters are telling you what they do want, can you give us a sense of what they're saying they don't want from this election and over the course of the campaign?
You know, what they're basically telling us they don't want is another Justin Trudeau. That's very clear. And the other thing that they really don't want, and this is something that hurts the Conservatives a bit, is somebody who looks a bit like Donald Trump. I mean, if there's anything that's been hurting the Conservative campaign, and particularly their leader, Pierre Poilievre, it's that the rhetoric and the positioning that he was using over the space of the last couple of years is coming back now a little bit to haunt him. And it's not trendy to be a Donald Trump adjacent these days. And Pierre Poilievre's trying very hard to get away from that, but there's still some residual effects from what he's been doing over the last 2 years.
And Darrell, too, if you could, I guess, square the images that we're seeing of these massive crowds coming to Pierre Poilievre's rallies and the poll numbers that we're seeing.
Well, we know that the Tory Conservative core is quite passionate, And 36% or 38% of Canadians say they would vote for the Conservatives in an election campaign. So 38% of the voting population in the city of Toronto, for example, is a really big number, or the city of Calgary is a really a big number. So the Conservative core is actually quite passionate. The problem that they've got is that the Conservative core isn't enough to win them the election. So yes, they can show up and they can certainly fill out a rally and be quite passionate, but at the same time, does that indicate how the people in the overall community are going to be voting? Not as good an indicator, I would say.
Okay, Darrell Bricker, I'm sure this is not the last time we will speak over the course of this campaign, but great to check in with you now. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.